let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. When was the last time someone called you just to talk? Not because they needed something, not because they had news to share, but simply because they wanted to hear your voice. When was the last time you had plans on a Friday night that didn't involve a screen? When someone asked what you did over the weekend, when was the last time your answer didn't sound like a carefully crafted excuse? Now, here's the harder question. When was the last time you stopped pretending that being alone was entirely your choice? There's a quiet epidemic happening right now, and it's not something you'll see trending on social media or discussed at dinner tables. It's the psychology of people who don't have friends, not the temporary loneliness that comes and goes, not the social butterfly who just happens to be between friend groups, but the deep, persistent reality of navigating life without genuine connection. And before you think this is about social skills or personality flaws, let me tell you something that might surprise you. The people who don't have friends aren't necessarily the ones you'd expect. They're not all introverts hiding in their rooms. They're not all socially awkward or difficult to be around. Many of them are charming, intelligent, successful people who somehow find themselves on the outside of every circle, watching connection happen around them but never quite reaching it themselves. So what's really happening here? What creates this invisible barrier between some people and the friendships that seem to come so naturally to everyone else? The psychology behind chronic friendlessness is far more complex than most people realize. It's not just about being shy or having trust issues, though those can certainly play a role. It's about a perfect storm of internal patterns, external circumstances, and learned behaviors that create what psychologists call relational avoidance. But that clinical term doesn't capture the daily reality of what it feels like to be perpetually on the periphery of human connection. Think about how friendships typically form. Most of them happen through proximity and repeated exposure. You meet someone at work, at school, through other friends, and gradually that acquaintance becomes familiarity. Familiarity becomes comfort, and comfort becomes friendship. But what happens when your brain has learned that comfort is dangerous? What happens when your nervous system treats intimacy like a threat? For many people without friends, the problem isn't that they don't want connection, it's that they've learned to fear it. Somewhere in their history, vulnerability became associated with pain. Maybe it was childhood betrayal, maybe it was adolescent rejection, maybe it was a series of small disappointments that accumulated into a deep distrust of human reliability. Whatever the source, their minds developed a sophisticated defense system designed to prevent future hurt by preventing future closeness. This creates what researchers call the friendship paradox. The more someone wants friends, the more their protective mechanisms push potential friends away. They become hypersensitive to signs of rejection, interpreting neutral interactions as negative ones. They overanalyze every conversation, looking for evidence that they're being judged or found lacking. They withdraw before they can be abandoned, creating the very outcome they're trying to avoid. But there's another layer to this psychology that's even more fascinating. Many people without friends have developed what I call relational perfectionism. They believe they need to be flawless, endlessly entertaining, perpetually available, and completely agreeable to deserve friendship. They think friendship is something they have to earn through performance, rather than something that grows through mutual authenticity. This perfectionism shows up in subtle ways. They never share their problems because they don't want to be a burden. They never disagree with anyone because they fear conflict will end the relationship. They never ask for help because they believe they should be self-sufficient. They never show their real emotions because they think people only want to be around positive, easy people. The tragic irony is that this performance of perfection actually repels genuine connection. People can sense when someone is holding back, when the conversation feels scripted, when the person they're talking to seems more like a pleasant stranger than a potential friend. Authentic friendship requires messiness, vulnerability, and the willingness to be imperfect together. There's also a temporal aspect to this psychology that most people don't recognize. Friendships exist in time, and they require consistent investment over months and years to develop depth. But people without friends often approach relationships with an urgency that actually sabotages the natural progression of intimacy. They either expect immediate closeness, or they give up too quickly when connection doesn't happen fast enough. They might meet someone they connect with and immediately start planning their entire social future around that one person, putting pressure on the relationship before it has time to breathe. Or they might have a few pleasant conversations with someone and then disappear when they don't feel an instant best friend bond. not realizing that most meaningful friendships develop slowly through accumulated small moments rather than dramatic revelations. This impatience often stems from a scarcity mindset about relationships. When you haven't had many friends, each potential friendship feels precious and urgent. The stakes feel impossibly high, because this might be your only chance. That desperation, while understandable, creates an energy that most people find overwhelming or off-putting. But perhaps the most heartbreaking aspect of the psychology of people without friends is how they've learned to rationalize their isolation. They tell themselves they're too independent for friendship, that they don't need people, that they're better off alone. They point to the drama in other people's relationships as evidence that solitude is superior. They convince themselves that their lack of friends is a choice, a sign of their self-sufficiency rather than a pattern they feel trapped in. This rationalization serves as emotional protection, but it also becomes a prison. The more someone insists they don't need friends, the harder it becomes to admit they actually want them. The more they criticize the messiness of other people's relationships, the more they distance themselves from the possibility of their own messy, beautiful connections. There's something else happening beneath the surface that's crucial to understand. Many people without friends have become hypervigilant about social rejection, but this hypervigilance actually makes them more likely to experience it. They walk into social situations already scanning for signs that they don't belong. They interpret ambiguous social cues as negative ones. They remember every slight and forget every kindness. This creates a feedback loop where their fears about rejection become self-fulfilling prophecies. Their defensive posture makes others uncomfortable. Their withdrawal confirms their belief that no one wants them around, and their isolation becomes deeper and more entrenched. The psychology of friendlessness also involves something called emotional labor imbalance. People desperate for connection often become emotional caretakers, always available to listen, always ready to help, always putting others' needs first. They think this generosity will earn them friendship, but instead it often leads to relationships where they give everything and receive very little in return. They become the person others call when they need support, but who rarely gets called when good things happen. They become the reliable shoulder to cry on, but never the first choice for celebration. This pattern reinforces their deep belief that they're only valuable when they're useful, that their worth is conditional on their service to others. And here's where the psychology gets even more complex. Many people without friends have actually developed incredible emotional intelligence and empathy as a result of their outsider status. They've spent so much time observing social dynamics from the sidelines that they understand human behavior in ways that naturally social people might not. They can read a room, sense undercurrents, and understand what people need emotionally. But the same sensitivity that could be their greatest asset in friendship often becomes their greatest liability. They feel everything so intensely that social interactions become overwhelming. They pick up on every subtle tension, every micro-expression of annoyance, every sign that they might be unwelcome. What others experience as normal social friction, they experience as confirmation of their worst fears about themselves. This emotional intensity extends to their internal experience as well. While others might feel mild disappointment when plans fall through, they feel devastation. While others might feel slight awkwardness in social situations, they feel crushing shame. The emotional volume of their experience is turned up so high that socializing becomes exhausting rather than energizing. This emotional exhaustion creates another layer of the problem. Social interaction becomes something they have to recover from rather than something that nourishes them. They might spend hours analyzing a single conversation, replaying every moment, searching for signs of rejection or approval. They might need days of solitude to recharge after what others would consider a casual social encounter. This leads to what psychologists call social anhedonia, the inability to experience pleasure from social situations that others find enjoyable. It's not that they don't want to enjoy socializing, it's that their nervous system has become so sensitized to potential threat that they can't relax enough to experience the natural rewards of human connection. Every laugh feels forced, every smile feels performed, every conversation feels like a test they're failing. But there's something even deeper happening here. Something that touches the very core of how these individuals see themselves in the world. People without friends often develop what researchers call a fundamental attribution error about their social experiences. When something goes wrong socially, they blame their inherent character flaws. When something goes right, they attribute it to luck or the other person's kindness. This creates a worldview where they are permanently flawed and everyone else is naturally equipped for connection. They see friendship happening around them like it's some mysterious skill they were never taught, some secret language everyone else learned while they were absent from class. They watch others navigate social situations with apparent ease and conclude that they're missing some essential human component. The reality is far different. Most people struggle with social anxiety, most people have experienced rejection, most people have felt like outsiders at various points in their lives, but those who have friends have learned to see these experiences as temporary setbacks rather than permanent verdicts on their worth. They've learned to bounce back from social disappointments, to try again after rejection, to view friendship as a skill that improves with practice rather than a talent you either have or don't. This brings us to one of the most crucial aspects of the psychology of people without friends, their relationship with time and patience in social situations. Friendship is fundamentally about showing up consistently over time, but people who are friendship-starved often approach relationships with either desperate urgency or premature resignation. They want immediate intimacy, or they assume immediate failure. They might meet someone and immediately start planning their wedding, or they might have one awkward moment and decide the person clearly doesn't like them. They struggle to exist in the middle ground, where most friendships actually develop, that space of gradual getting to know you, of slowly building trust, of allowing connection to unfold naturally without forcing it or abandoning it prematurely. This impatience often stems from a deep fear that this might be their only chance. When you haven't had many opportunities for friendship, each potential relationship carries enormous weight. The pressure becomes so intense that it actually interferes with the natural chemistry that allows friendships to develop. It's like trying to force a flower to bloom by pulling on its petals. There's also a fascinating paradox in how people without friends relate to solitude. On the surface, they often claim to prefer being alone, to value their independence, to find other people exhausting or disappointing. They develop elaborate justifications for why solitude is superior, why they don't need the complications of human relationships. But underneath this rationalization is often a profound grief for the connections they've never had. They've learned to find meaning in solitude not because it's naturally fulfilling for them, but because it's the only option that feels safe. They've become experts at being alone not by choice, but by necessity, and they've had to convince themselves that this expertise is actually a preference. This creates an internal conflict that's emotionally exhausting. Part of them craves connection, while another part has learned to fear it. Part of them watches others' friendships with longing, while another part criticizes those same relationships as shallow or dramatic. They exist in a constant state of wanting what they've taught themselves not to want. The psychological defense mechanisms that develop around chronic friendlessness are sophisticated and often invisible, even to the person experiencing them. They might become hyper-independent, refusing help or support because they've learned not to expect it from others. They might become hyper-analytical about social interactions, dissecting every conversation until it loses all spontaneity and warmth. They might develop a cynical worldview about human nature, focusing on all the ways people disappoint each other as justification for their own isolation. They might become perfectionistic in social situations, believing they need to be endlessly entertaining, perpetually agreeable, constantly useful to deserve anyone's time or attention. These patterns become so ingrained that they feel like personality traits rather than learned responses to pain. The person begins to identify with their isolation, to see it as fundamental to who they are rather than as a pattern they develop to protect themselves. They might say things like, "I'm just not a social person," or "I've always been a loner," not realizing that these statements describe their coping strategies, not their true nature. Perhaps most tragically, many people without friends have lost touch with their authentic selves in their attempts to become someone others might want to befriend. They've spent so much energy trying to figure out what others want from them, that they've forgotten what they actually want from others. They've become so focused on being likable that they've lost track of what they actually like. This creates relationships that feel hollow even when they do form. They might finally connect with someone, but the connection is based on the performance of who they think they should be rather than who they actually are. The friendship becomes another source of anxiety rather than relief, because they're constantly worried about maintaining the facade that attracted the person in the first place. The psychological impact of this ongoing performance is profound. It reinforces their deepest fear that their true self is unlovable, that they need to earn acceptance through constant adaptation and improvement. It prevents them from experiencing the relief and joy that comes from being known and accepted as they are, flaws and all, devils and all. But here's where the psychology becomes even more intricate. People without friends often develop what I call relational hypervigilance. They become so attuned to potential rejection that they start interpreting neutral social cues as negative ones. A delayed text response becomes evidence of disinterest. A cancelled plan becomes proof of their unworthiness. A moment of distraction during conversation becomes confirmation that they're boring. This hypervigilance creates a distorted reality where every social interaction feels like a minefield. They walk into rooms already scanning for signs that they don't belong. They rehearse conversations in their minds, preparing for rejection before it even happens. They remember every slight glance, every unanswered message, every moment of social awkwardness with perfect clarity while forgetting the smiles, the warmth, the genuine moments of connection that might have happened in the same interaction. It's exhausting to live this way. Every social situation becomes a performance review where they're constantly monitoring their own behaviour and others' reactions. They can't relax into the natural flow of human interaction because they're too busy analysing it in real time. This creates a feedback loop where their anxiety about being rejected actually makes rejection more likely, because people can sense the tension, the desperation, the constant self-monitoring. There's something else happening that's crucial to understand. Many people without friends have developed an inverted relationship with vulnerability. While healthy friendships require gradual mutual disclosure of personal information, people starved for connection often swing between two extremes. They either share nothing, maintaining such rigid boundaries that no one can get close, or they overshare immediately, dumping their entire emotional history on someone they barely know. Both approaches sabotage connection, but for different reasons. The person who shares nothing never gives others a chance to know them, while the person who shares everything overwhelms others with intimacy they haven't earned yet. It's like trying to build a house by either never laying a foundation or by trying to construct the entire building in a single day. This happens because they've never learned the delicate dance of reciprocal vulnerability that healthy relationships require. They don't understand that friendship is built through a gradual exchange of increasingly personal information, where each person matches the other's level of disclosure. They either hold back completely or flood forward, both of which disrupt the natural rhythm of relationship building. The impact of this pattern extends beyond just friendship into their entire social identity. People without friends often develop what researchers call learned helplessness about relationships. They start to believe that connection is something that happens to other people, not something they can actively create or influence. They see themselves as passive recipients of others' social choices rather than active participants in building relationships. This passive stance becomes self-fulfilling. When you believe you have no control over whether people like you or want to spend time with you, you stop taking the small actions that actually build friendships. You stop reaching out, stop making plans, stop following up on conversations. You wait for others to initiate everything, and when they don't, you take it as confirmation that you were right to believe you're unwanted. But there's an even deeper psychological pattern at work here. Many people without friends have developed what I call anticipatory rejection. They reject others before others can reject them. They find flaws in potential friends, reasons why the relationship wouldn't work, evidence that the other person isn't really worth knowing anyway. It's a protective mechanism that shields them from disappointment, but it also ensures they never have to face the vulnerability required for genuine connection. This anticipatory rejection often looks like high standards or discernment, but it's actually fear in disguise. They might say they're looking for someone who really understands them, someone who shares all their interests, someone who meets impossibly specific criteria. What they're really saying is that they're looking for someone who feels so safe that vulnerability doesn't feel risky. But such people don't exist because vulnerability is inherently risky. The psychology of chronic friendlessness also involves a complex relationship with time that most people don't recognize. Friendship exists in duration, not just in moments. It requires showing up consistently over months and years, through boring periods as well as exciting ones, through conflict as well as harmony. But people desperate for connection often approach relationships with an all-or-nothing mentality. They might have one great conversation with someone and immediately start imagining their entire future together, or they might have one awkward interaction and write the person off completely. They struggle to exist in the middle ground where most friendships actually develop. that space of gradual familiarity, of slowly building shared experiences, of allowing trust to develop naturally over time. This impatience often stems from a scarcity mindset about relationships. When you haven't experienced much connection, each potential friendship feels precious and urgent. The stakes feel impossibly high because this might be your only chance. That desperation, while understandable, creates an energy that most people find overwhelming or concerning. There's also a profound misunderstanding about what friendship actually looks like in practice. People without friends often have idealized notions of what relationships should be, based on movies, books, or their observations of others' highlight reels. They expect constant communication, perfect understanding, unwavering support, and perpetual harmony. So if you recognize yourself in any of this, if you've spent years wondering why connection feels so elusive while watching others make it look effortless, know that you're not broken. You're not missing some essential human component. You've simply learned patterns that once protected you but now limit you. The psychology of friendlessness isn't a permanent sentence. It's a map of where you've been and a guide for where you can go. Because the moment you stop running from vulnerability and start walking toward it, everything changes. Your story doesn't have to end in isolation. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply showing up as yourself and trusting that someone, somewhere, is looking for exactly who you are.